It's the final episode in our two-part mini-series on the state of the state parks. This episode, Oregon State Parks. So let's go. Welcome to RV Out West. I'm your host, Brooks. My Family of Four's base camp is located in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and our RV adventures radiate out from there. Please, grab a mug of coffee and join us as we discuss RVing around the American West. From sweet camping spots, gear and equipment, to tips and tricks, we've got you covered. We are RV Out West. Oregon State Parks date back to 1921, when it was created as a branch of the Highway Department. Currently, they manage 170 state parks. And these parks, as those of us who live in the Pacific Northwest already know, are diverse, offering various activities like hiking, camping, and a stunning coastline. Joining us on this episode is Stefanie of Oregon State Parks. She will share with us the top 5 most visited state parks, as well as the top 5 least visited state parks, if perhaps you are looking for a more quaint and intimate experience. She also shares with us some of her favorite camping trips, as well as what the state parks mean to her. Stefanie, thank you so much for joining us here on RV Out West.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, so if you wouldn't mind, let's kind of start off about yourself and kind of how you ended up with Oregon State Parks.
Absolutely. I joined state parks about 2.5 years ago, and it was something that I was really excited to do because I am an Oregon State Parks fan. And so I would travel to state parks and camp in them and hike in them already. And so it was such a joy to be able to get a job, and not only get a job with Oregon State Parks, but my role is really fun because I get to talk about all the cool stuff that we're doing. And so not only do I get to work here and I get to go to some of the most incredible places across the state, I get to talk about them with other people. And so it is a really great gig. I'm the public information officer for Oregon State Parks. And so I spend a lot of time talking about what we're up to and what's new and interesting. And so it's a lot of fun. That is me. And I've lived in Oregon for, like 3 or 4 decades now. So I consider it home.
Nice. Okay. Do you tent camp, RV camp, hammock camp, all of the above?
Ooh, hammock camp. I haven't done that. That sounds like fun. For the most part, tent camping, but now we're kind of transitioning to more of like the cabin yurt camping because my husband refuses to sleep on the ground when he doesn't have to. And so we're transitioning to a little bit more comfort. And I think eventually we might look into doing something like either a small trailer or an RV. We haven't quite invested in that yet, but I think that's a discussion point. And I always have this kind of fun goal of picturing getting a camper van is another thing that's crossed my mind. So we're kind of thinking about it, what that might look like in the future.
Getting off the ground is amazing. We sleep on a 12-inch memory foam mattress in our RV. I get a great night's sleep.
Exactly. It was a
raining
for that hike the next day.
Yeah, and then I'm refreshed, and then you hear the pitter-patter on the rain on the camper, and you're like, but I'm not getting wet.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about some of your favorite PNW camping trips and memories. Like, where's been some really fun places that you've gone, with your family or with your friends that are some of your favorite camping trips and memories you have here in the Pacific Northwest?
I feel like my favorite camping trip is always the last one I took. And so I'm going to talk about during spring break. My family and I went out to Cape Lookout State Park, and we were lucky enough to score a cabin, which can be sometimes difficult. And just for the listeners, we don't get any special treatment. We have to make reservations like everybody else. And so we were lucky enough to get a reservation, and we spent a couple of nights out there, and we were lucky enough to get that rare moments of sun. Oregon spring break is usually characterized by heavy downpours and overcast skies, but we were lucky enough to get some sun breaks, and so we got to explore the area. It was during our whale watch week, which happens during spring break, and we didn't see any whales, but we went to some really cool places. We went to Cape Meares Lighthouse, which is nearby. We went to Cape Kiwanda and hiked the dune up there. Some really beautiful views. That area is known as the Three Capes. And so it's Cape Meares, Cape Lookout where we were camping, and then Cape Kawanda. And there's a scenic road that takes you to all three places, which is a really fun way to explore the area.
Kind of how long's the drive in the three different capes? Like, can you do it in a day? Is it?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I don't know exactly, but you can definitely do it in a day. I want to say from Cape Lookout to Cape Meares, maybe 20 minutes. And then from Cape Lookout to Cape Kawanda, maybe a little bit longer, half an hour, 40.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly, but definitely doable within a day. And there's a lot of cool stuff to see along the way, like Sitka Sedge is another nice little hike, and that's on the way. And what's fun about the Oregon State Coast is, I mean, you just go a couple miles and there's another park. And so when you explore an area, there really is a lot of fun places to pull over. So just being open to adventure and seeing where the day takes you. But that's definitely doable during a day. And they have a really cool hike too at Cape Lookout. I think it's called the Cape Lookout Trail, and it extends fairly far into the ocean. And so it's really great views. If you go all the way to the end, it's about 2.5 miles, so 5 miles round trip. So it is definitely a day, like a full day experience if you hike like I do. But the amazing thing, the views are incredible. Even just a mile in, you can look over and see Cape Kawanda from the trail. And it was a little bit cloudy when we went, so you could see just like this sea of low-lying clouds and then Haystack Rock just peeking up over the clouds. And so it was pretty magical.
Yeah, that's cool. So one of the things I would like to ask you is, what are the top 5 most visited Oregon State parks?
Yes, and I pulled that data for you. So I have the most visited state park is Harris Beach State Recreation Area. And the data is for day use. Those are the numbers that I pulled. And so Harris Beach State Recreation Area is on our south coast, near the California border. And it's in the Samuel Boardman corridor, which actually that corridor came in 5th. And so it also makes a showing on this list. And it's one of the most beautiful stretches. I shouldn't say this out loud because I don't want to get in trouble with the other sections, but it's one of my favorite stretches. And part of it is because even though you have these numbers about being the most visited, there still is the sense that it doesn't have as much visitation as the central or north coast, maybe because it doesn't have as many larger communities nearby. But it's just beautiful. It's really lovely area. You kind of get those rocky, really high, like rocky cliffs with the sweeping ocean views.
So we got 1 and 5.
Yeah, that's number 1. And so then we have to look at Yaquina Bay. And I always stumble on this one. It's like some people say Yaquina, some people say Yaquina. And so you have to kind of keep your ear out for the locals and just and say what they say. But it's a day use area near Newport. And so that's the lighthouse is there. And so it's fun. When it's open, you can go inside and see what it was like. This lighthouse, I think it was only in operation for a few years before they opened up the Yaquina Head Lighthouse. And so it's a fun little place to explore. And then it also has beach access. So,
okay.
And so that's number 2.
That's amazing.
It's a fun stop. So if you're in the Newport area, it's definitely worth a visit. And the other one is Sunset Bay. And so Sunset Bay is also, I've camped there with my family and I really enjoyed it. Because it's such a pretty little, I think the nearest large community is Coos Bay, but it's still a little bit of a drive from Coos Bay. And it has the sense of being kind of like tucked away. It's right next to also Shore Acres State Park, which has a really lovely garden, and also some of those views of like the rocky cliffside. And when it's stormy, they have these huge waves that crash up against the rocks and the spray. So if you've ever seen like an Oregon photo with huge ocean spray, a lot of times it comes from the Shore Acres Park, which is within hiking distance of Sunset Bay, which is a really nice trip to do. And then it's also close to Cape Arago. So I love places where you can kind of have multiple experiences nearby, and Sunset Bay is one of those. And so you have a hiking trail that goes to Short Acres, and I think it might even extend to Cape Arago, although you might have to have some time on the highway in order to get there, but I can't remember exactly. But it's a nice cluster of parks right next to each other that are worth checking out.
Yeah.
And then Silver Falls, a favorite. I live in Salem, and so Silver Falls is less than an hour away, and it's incredible. It's one of those state parks that was almost a national park, but the reason it wasn't accepted as a national park because it had been logged, and so a lot of that the beautiful canopy had been removed, and so when they came to evaluate it, they just didn't see the beauty the potential. And now when you visit, I mean, that was decades ago, so now when you visit, it's a lush forest and has the incredible waterfalls. There's the Trail of 10 Falls, which is really beautiful to do. I think it's an 8-mile loop, which is quite ambitious, but if you're up for the challenge, that's something that's really fun to do there. And really, there's no other place like it. To have that high a concentration of waterfalls and really large waterfalls is quite spectacular. And so that's a local favorite.
I gotta say that I find that the top 5, I don't know why I'm surprised, but nothing inland. All 5 are along the coast.
No, Silver Falls.
Oh, they're not? Is Silver Falls not in?
Yeah, so the first 3, that's a good observation. The first 3 are along the coast, but Silver Falls is in the valley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And I was like, wait a minute, these also, I mean, I know the Oregon coast was stunning, but there are other parts of Oregon that are just as beautiful. So
absolutely. One of the things that's so incredible about Oregon state parks is just the rich diversity of landscapes. And so it is really beautiful to explore all different parts of the state, whether that's the valley with the waterfalls and the rivers, or you have the coast, which is quite beautiful. And you have everything from sand dunes to rocky cliff sides to sandy beaches. And then the mountains also just offer their own unique beauty with the high desert and alpine lakes like Wallowa. And so there is so much to explore.
there is.
But when you're talking about sheer visitation, the coast really is is the top performer in terms of draw. The last one that I mentioned briefly is Samuel Boardman State Scenic Corridor. Harris Beach is within that, but there's also several. It's about a 10-12 mile stretch on the south coast, and every stop along the way is just spectacular. They have the natural bridges out there. I took a hike Cape Sebastian, was really beautiful. So it's definitely worth a visit.
I'm kind of surprised that my favorite state park wasn't mentioned yet.
Oh, what's your favorite?
Well, hold on. We'll get to my favorite. I want to talk about now the top 5 least visited. And so just because they're least visited doesn't mean they're terrible to not go see. I'm thinking they're just quieter and more calm and whatever. So what are the top 5 least visited state parks?
Yes. And this stretched my brain a little because we often talk about the most visited. And so the least visited are I think I've only been to maybe 1 on this list. And some of them I took out a couple waysides, because one thing that folks might not know about Oregon State Parks is that we used to be part of the highway department. And so some of the parks that we manage are waysides. And so they're just like little places, little respites to pull off and to have a picnic, but not necessarily to that full kind of state park experience.
Right. So let's take those out.
So I took a couple of those out, but now that I'm looking at this list, there might be one that's still in there. So Booth State Scenic Corridor near Lakeview, Oregon. And then I haven't been there, but it has old growth ponderosa pines, and there's wildlife, mule deer, coyote, cougar, and there's picnic tables. And it's just a nice place to stop and have a picnic. And
so it's a day use.
It is a day use area. And so that is the least. And so let me look at some of the others on the list. And then we also have Battle Mountain Forest State Scenic Corridor near Pendleton.
That's a really cool area.
It is a cool
I like going to
area.
Pendleton. Yeah, down in that area. It's really, really cool.
And this has a little bit of interesting history. It served as a CCC camp, who and the members helped constructed the water system there, and they installed picnic tables and built some large granite stone fireplaces. And so it has a neat little piece of history. This is also a day use area. So the next one that we have is the Ukiah Dale Forest, and it's open for camping, and it's first come, first serve. And so this one is near Pendleton, and it has spring wildflowers, which are really beautiful, including camas. And then it looks like it has 27 primitive sites near the water and some paved parking that can accommodate self-contained RVs. And so it doesn't have full hookups or anything like that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So it's just it's a little quieter, near the river.
Exactly.
It's a little slower pace, which is nice to check out if you're looking to get away. And so the next one is Sumter Valley Dredge. It's not for camping, but it's a really cool part of history that's worth checking out. So if you're camping in the area, you can go ahead and see that. And it's an old dredge, and you can actually go inside, and there's interpretive panels, and it's interesting to learn a little bit more about the history. You're welcome aboard the dredge from May to October. So it's seasonal, but it's a really neat piece of history to explore if you're in the area. And there's some trails along around the area too, so that's fun to hang out. And sometimes rangers do live interpretation, and they might do like gold panning demonstrations on the weekends, which is really fun if you haven't done it. The next one, and a lot of these I'm so excited to explore, and I haven't had a chance to. Jackson Kimball, which is near Klamath Falls, and it also has 10 primitive sites, and so really small, but it is first come, first serve, and it's camping's open seasonally from May to November. And it's just this pristine area that's located at the headwaters of the Wood River. And so it's just a beautiful place where forest and river and wildlife, and it's surrounded by the Southern Cascade Mountains. And there's places to fish and canoe, and it's just a neat place to check out.
In Washington State, the state park system it's called the Discover Pass, which is kind of needed if you plan to visit any day use areas, etc. So like when we buy our tabs every year, you can just add the extra $30 it costs to have them also send you out the Discover Pass. Does Oregon State Parks have kind of an annual pass that visitors can purchase?
Absolutely. We have our annual parking permit, and that is something that visitors can buy online, or they can also purchase it at the park.
Then what's the pass called?
It's just called an annual permit. So we don't have a fancy name, but it works just the same.
How much is it? Is it $30 as well for the year, or
let me double check, because there have been some changes recently, so I want to make sure that I'm giving the most accurate price. But it is for all of the day use areas that charge. And at Oregon State Parks, we only have about 25 parks out of the more than 250 that charge for the day use parking.
Okay.
And so while it's great to get, I also want to make sure that folks know that the majority of our parks you can access for free. And so it's still a good deal to get the permit. That's a good one to have, but it isn't necessary to be able to access all the different places.
My favorite state park is Nehalem Bay.
Oh, yeah.
On Nehalem Bay on the coast is an amazing state park.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. There's a reservation game that I always have to play, unfortunately, if I plan to book at Nehalem Bay or some of these other coastal state parks, like Fort Stevens or whatever, right? It's hate the game, not the player kind of thing. But like it's, if I want to be down in Nehalem Bay for 4th of July weekend, and I wait to be fair and say, okay, I'm only going to be there Friday through Monday. But if I wait the Friday before 9 months before 7 months, whatever the window is, I'm too late because people have started the minute that window is open. They'll book Monday to Monday. So they get the 4th of July weekend. And then as time gets closer, they change their reservation to say, oh, I really only need it Friday through Monday. I'm going to cancel Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Do you follow my?
I do. We discourage that, and
I know it's not fair, right? It's not right. I know. But if you want, right? So my question is, being that it's not necessarily equitable and whatever, is there anything that the state parks is looking at to curb that?
Okay, so I found the rule that I wanted to share. So reservations made for 6 or more consecutive nights that are later shortened, they'll be charged the nightly rate for each night removed, in addition to a transaction fee for the change. And this rule applies to shortening nights at the beginning of a reservation, not the end of the reservation. So that rule is something that is put in place to try and discourage people from doing that practice where they're making a longer reservation than they intend to keep in order to make it a little more fair. We recognize that it can be really difficult to get those reservations.
I wanted to ask kind of what can you share about the future of the Oregon State Parks? Like are there things you can tease about possible new state parks or other things that, maybe 4, 5, 6 down the road years, kind of what have you got that you can talk about the future?
Yeah, in the short term, we're expanding some capacity at Silver Falls and Shampoo. We're adding some additional camping. The Oregon State Legislature was made a generous investment in 2021 of $50 million in GO bond funds, and so those funds have allowed us to target some really essential projects. A lot of them are addressing aging infrastructure, like bathrooms, and also increasing like ADA camping. There's also at Fort Stevens, the guardhouse. It's a historic structure that we were able to use some of the funds to do some work to replace a roof and preserve it. And in addition to that, we have these 2 parks, Shampoo and Silver Falls, that are very popular parks in the park system that we're going to be able to expand capacity. I don't have the specific numbers in terms of the campsites that will be added yet, but it is exciting that over the course of the next couple of years, we'll be adding some additional camping. And we're also looking, and this isn't short term, but in the long term, we're also looking at how can we add capacity at existing parks, just like we are at Silver Falls and Shampoo. When we're looking at sustainability, I don't know that opening up like large brand new parks are necessarily in that near future. I think in terms of sustainability and really investing that money, I think expanding capacity at some of the existing parks is something that we're talking about doing.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, we just have a few minutes left, so I really would like to ask you kind of, what does the Oregon State Parks mean to you?
Oh, I think it's about connection. There's something about unplugging and going to a place where you're surrounded by nature, where you could hear, the ocean under the river, or you're under the canopy of these amazing trees that helps you just breathe a little easier and be present in a way that fosters connection. So not connection with yourself, connection with the land, and connection with the people that you're experiencing it with. It allows you to be in that space and to really live in the moment. And I love that experience. And so for me, connection, it's all about connection.
That's pretty awesome. Well, where can people learn more about Oregon State Parks online? What are the socials? Where can they follow Oregon State Parks and, reservation system, etc.?
Yeah. So the site where most of the information is stateparks.oregon.gov, and that's a great place to look up different parks, or if you're traveling in an area, what parks are nearby. And each park has a web page that goes into the history and the amenities. And so it's a really nice page to visit if you're thinking about trying to maybe settle on where you might be going next. And then from there, if it's you're looking at getting reservations, it has a button for reservations that'll take you to our reservation page. And so right now, those are two different pages, but you can get to the reservation page through stateparks.oregon.gov. But if you want to go straight to the reservation page, because you have a sense that you already know where you want to go, OregonStateParks.reserveamerica.com is the place where you can make reservations. And there's one thing that I wanted to point out, because I know that tips or suggestions, I know that it can be really difficult to get those reservations. But what I was going to recommend is, if you're somewhat flexible and open to adventure, if you go to that website and you hit camping this weekend, it's a fun little tab that you can narrow it down by amenities. So you can say, show me all the cabins that are available this weekend, or show me the RV sites that are available this weekend. And so I think it's something
That's a cool tab.
Yeah, I think it's something that if you're open to discovering new places, that you could really find some cool reservations online. So just being open, using that tab. And so that's one way. Another way I was going to mention, you talked about Nehalem Bay. It's been closed for construction, but it's going to be reopening reservations probably in the next month or so, including reservations for summer. So keep looking on our web page and follow our social media to find out when those reservations will be released, because it'll be a bulk release of those reservations. So you might have availability for the whole summer being opened at once. And so the chances of getting reservations will be pretty high.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so because of construction closures, we have to do it in such a way that we might close for longer than the construction, because we're not quite sure when it will end. And so when it ends and we still have inventory, we release it all at once.
Well, cool. Well, Stefanie, thank you so much for taking the time out of your morning to join us here on RV Out West. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So happy to be here and to share Oregon State Parks with everybody.
Thank you again for listening to RV Out West. I sincerely appreciate it. If you haven't heard the first episode in this mini-series on the state of the state parks, please go listen to the previous episode. If you liked this episode, share it with your family and friends. I'd also like to invite you to follow RV Out West on Instagram and Facebook, where you can join in on the conversation. Next week, we have a very insightful conversation with Campfire Stories. They have written and published collections of short stories that feature wonderful stories about adventures in the wild. We talk with them to hear their story about how they came up with their idea and why it was so important to them to curate these stories all in one location. It's a great conversation, and you'll want to tune in next Monday. Thanks so much for listening to RV Out West. Join us again next week. Please like and subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you choose to get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. I sure would appreciate it if you left a rating or a review of the show. Special thanks to Scott Holmes Music for providing us the intro song, We Are One. RV Out West can be found on Instagram and Facebook, where you can interact with us and follow along on our RV adventures around the Pacific Northwest. So get out there, explore, and go see what's beyond the horizon.